And President Trump is doing a lot of good stuff, I believe. I know I'm irritating a lot of you again, but I think so. Because, as I said also in Davos, the 2% reached by all NATO countries now at the end of 2025 would never, ever, ever have happened without Trump. Do you really think that Spain and Italy and Belgium and Canada would have decided to move from 1.5 to 2%? Italy spending 10 billion more now on defense at the beginning of the year without President Trump? No way, it would not have happened. And do you really think that in the...
Yeah, and I'm glad that he's saying this, and you can see the look of all the other European politicians. They're like putting their head down. I've been here in Europe for a couple years now, and I was here when Biden was president, and now I'm here when Trump is president. One of my big observations of Europe in general is just that it's a lot of bureaucracy BS, a lot of people talking, but nothing actually gets done. And I think a lot of people don't like Trump's method of speaking because it's very confrontational. I personally really like it because I'm a no BS kind of guy, and I don't really care about rhetoric or, oh my God, is he dangerous or whatever. I care about results. And clearly, up until this point, the results were not working. So this is why it's so frustrating, because Trump has his faults, for sure. For example, he promised that he would not get into any wars, and he's got into a bunch of wars. My dad has made the argument that he's asserting a lot of authoritarian control and overstepping his role as the executive branch, and I think that could be a fair criticism as well. But when he's doing something good, that's genuinely good, not just for US, but also for everybody in NATO, it's in everybody's best interest right now to up through the fence with how much uncertainty there is in the world right now. So at the end of the day, the result is overall positive. But people find a way to frame it as a negative thing, right? And I'm glad that this guy has the balls to stand up and say it. And what sucks is that him saying this, if you look at the comments, right? Daddy Trump phase continues. It's time to replace Rutte. He's a Trump bootlicker. I think this guy might love Trump more than Trump loves himself. Sounds like a used car salesman. You see all these ad hominem attacks against him. I don't know how much of these comments are legit because they all come from anonymous accounts. They could also be bots. But this seems to be a very common sentiment here in Europe. People just hate Trump. And I don't care what you believe. If you disagree with me, I think that's totally okay. My problem is with people are like sheep, you know? They just follow whatever the mainstream media tells them. Trump is bad. Trump is a Nazi. How is he bad? How is he a Nazi? No, he's just a bad person. I hate when Europeans try to say like, oh, he should have done it this way. I didn't like his tone, bullying the NATO chief just for saying the obvious, right?
In The Hague, we would have come to the 5% commitment without President Trump. No way. So I think he is very important to NATO. He is totally committed to NATO. He had one big irritant, one big pebble in the shoe, which is there since Eisenhower, the fact that the Europeans were not paying up. And with the NATO defense commitment in The Hague, the outcome of the Hague summit on spending and also industrial production in Ukraine, but particularly here on spending, we are now equalizing with the US, so that irritant is gone. So there is a total commitment by the US to NATO in Article 5, but also an expectations that Europeans and Canadians will pay more, and we are doing so. Germany is a big example. You spent 70 billion on defense in 2021. You will spend 160 billion, 90 billion more in 2029. You will reach the 3.5% core defense spending as part of the 5% by 2029. This is Germany leading the way, the second biggest economy in NATO. This is crucial, and it is a great example to others. And of course, we have a couple of countries like Poland and Estland, Lithuania.
I'm glad that they're solving the military spending problem, which I totally agree with Trump on. America was getting screwed in that deal. But what people fail to understand as well is that it's very hard to mobilize your military. You're going to tell me that all these Western European countries who have not experienced any kind of conflict really since World War II, just because they have a little bit more money now, are going to be able to gather troops, bring morale up, find people to fight for their country, and be able to do all of this while there's an ongoing attack happening in Europe? Absolutely not. Well, the only country that I really believe in, honestly, is Poland, because the attitude in the country is very much like, if you mess with us, F around and find out. There are people that has constantly stood up to people invading them, so they're not afraid for a fight. Whereas I think a lot of Western Europeans are. This is why they're behaving this way. They're shitting their pants because they know deep down the truth.
And Latvia already on the 5%, but also Canada. Can I mention that here? Canada is back. Canada 2%, committing to the 5%, being a huge supporter for Ukraine, also spending a lot of money on these Pearl packages. So Canada is really back, and I think that's fantastic. Hey, but if so when President Trump is doing good stuff, I will praise him. And I don't mind him publishing text messages. And if anyone thinks here, again, that the European Union or Europe as a whole can defend itself without the US, keep on dreaming. You can't.
Yeah.
We can't. We need each other. And why do we need each other? I tell you. First of all, because also the US needs NATO. And the US is not only in NATO to prevent a mistake after the First World War, not to re-engage with Europe. And then again, the long arm of history reaching out to the US again in the Second World War, as Churchill famously said in his speech in 1941 in the US Congress. They are also in NATO because for the US to stay safe, and by the way, Arctic region is evidence here, they need a secure Arctic, they need a secure Euro-Atlantic, and they also need a secure Europe. So the US has every interest in NATO as much as Canada and the European NATO allies. But for Europe, if you really want to go it alone, and those who are pleading for that, forget that you can ever get there with 5%. It will be 10%. You have to build up your own nuclear capability. That costs billions and billions of euros. You will lose then, in that scenario, you would lose the ultimate guarantor of our freedom, which is the US nuclear umbrella.
You also have to keep in mind that the mental shift that people have to do is very drastic. Maybe it's a little bit less now, but the military culture in the US is quite strong. There's a lot of people who are itching for a fight, who want to defend their country. We have a culture that promotes the military a lot. You just look at all these guys' faces, they're so somber because they know it's the truth. Trying to convince Western Europeans to go fight in a country on the east or go fight in Ukraine, I don't think it's gonna happen because it's a very big morale shift and you have to change the mindset of Europeans. And I don't think Europeans right now are in a wartime mindset at all.
Board of Peace, I will not comment because when it comes to the Board of Peace, obviously NATO is not directly involved in the Middle East peace efforts. Of course, we welcome all the work to secure peace in Gaza, where allies are navigating the crisis, but we are not ourselves involved in that sense.
And if you doubt the US military, right, look what happened in Venezuela. I lived in Colombia for 4 years. I had a lot of Venezuelan friends and they all hated Maduro. So you have to be careful with what you see online because look, this guy is saying 55% of Venezuelans disagree with foreign military intervention. Sample 800 people. Bro, what is this? Following the US military operation on January 3rd, 92% grateful for removal. I knew so many people from Venezuela that fled the country under Maduro, and the stories they told me were crazy. One of my buddies lived in a gated community. Like they had to do gated communities with weapons and everything because when people would try to break into their house, they would really try to break in. And there was one day where he walked outside his house and there was just a guy, like a dead body right in front of his house because I think he was trying to climb the house and then they pushed him off and then he died. Some crazy stuff, right? Something that I disagree with is I don't think US should be getting involved in regime change in other countries, right? I think we have a really bad history of that. But I think the military operation from a strategic standpoint was very good. They were able to send a message to the rest of the world that US is not playing around. They were able to do this military operation in a short amount of time and not cause any wars. They were able to limit the amount of casualties. They were able to show the might of the American military to the rest of the world. And now you are in the favor of the Venezuelan people. If anybody doubted the US military before, now people know that we're ready to play. And this is why I like Trump's approach a lot. He's walking the walk and he's applying pressure on other leaders to do the same. And all the people who have just been talking big game but have not really doing anything are squirming now. And that's why they don't like him.
Then on Iran, we are only involved with Iran when it comes to the fact that Iran and North Korea and Russia and China are working together. But again, if it comes to the situation in Iran itself at the moment, and of course I'm extremely worried about that, we all are, it's not for NATO to get involved because NATO has its of course, is concentrating on the Euro-Atlantic. And what we really see is the US pivoting more towards Asia, but at the same time, absolutely with Europe, understanding that Europe will have to build up its own armed forces even further based on the The Hague Defence Investment Pledge, and that will mean over time that the US can do more in the Pacific, but there will always be a very strong conventional US presence in Europe, and obviously the nuclear umbrella will be there. I totally commend everything being done on.
Man, why are all these like European bureaucrats just so boring to listen to? They have no charisma. They don't know how to public speak. Am I the only one? Tell me I'm not the only one. If you are a conservative American or come from a Polish family, I highly recommend moving back to Poland. Poland is the most American European country in a lot of ways, with mindset, how we view family, defense, standing up for freedom. So if you guys are interested in moving to Poland, I highly recommend setting up an intro call.